Good afternoon, everyone. This is Evan Michaels with American Legal Media and Verdict Search. Thank you for joining today's webinar. First, let's just give it another minute or two for any other folks out there that are going to be joining this webinar, just as a courtesy. And of course, what you should be seeing is the first slide, the Verdict Search slide with today's date. Okay, I see a few more individuals have joined. So let's give this to about 12:32 Eastern Standard Time as a courtesy. So everyone who's joining us today will be able to enjoy the webinar from the beginning. Okay, I say we begin. So thank you again for joining our webinar today. My name's Evan Michaels, and we're going to be exploring verdictsearch.com and claim evaluations in medical malpractice cases and instances where attorneys or insurers maybe did not quite evaluate the particular case properly before going to trial. Okay, so there's me, Evan Michaels. I'm an enterprise account executive with American Legal Media. So I'm devoted to providing intelligence and customer service to leading law firms and attorneys nationwide. Before joining American Legal Media, I was an insurance defense attorney for about a decade in New York City. My particular firm at the time did have a medical malpractice division. And then of course I switched to the plaintiff side after that decade and handled plaintiff's claims in New York still for a number of years thereafter. Included on this webinar today, I have the pleasure of having Glenn. Glenn's the editor-in-chief of Verdict Search. So he may chime in time to time with a little bit of color commentary or some insights that only Glenn could provide regarding the topics that we're going to be approaching today.
Hi, everyone.
Oops, my mouse got a little overactive there. Okay, so the insights for today. First, pretrial offers and demands versus actual awards. So in this instance, we're going to be evaluating where maybe evaluation mistakes are made with respect to medical malpractice claims when going to trial. Second, how expert testimony can sway jury decision making. So we'll explore one or two expert opinions that were involved in resulting in an award or a defense verdict. And that really does tie into maybe miscalculations with respect to evaluating med mal cases. Down the line, we'll take a look at a few reports regarding damages awards in wrongful death medical malpractice cases. These are high stakes. When somebody has died, there's survivor damages. The estate's bringing the action, so we're going to explore verdict reports with respect to wrongful death and med mal. Finally, comparative negligence. Large verdict awards with a partially responsible plaintiff. We're going to see that even though it seems very often that medical malpractice could be a zero-sum game, either there's a big reward or a defense verdict, there are times where the actions taken by the plaintiff, or in a wrongful death case, the person, the decedent, really maybe inhibited the ability for the physician, the hospital, to apply the proper care. So we'll be looking at that as well. Okay, transitioning here. Everyone should see the Verdict Search interactive homepage. Now, I'm not going to be going into all the bells and whistles with Verdict Search. We're here to actually explore these topics. But Verdict Search is a very intuitive search engine where you simply have a number of drop-down menus that allow you to quickly obtain reports on verdicts and settlements nationwide quickly. Your standard drop-downs: jurisdiction, accident, claim type, injury type, and all of these can be qualified with search terms. We're going to go big. We're going straight to medical malpractice. And we have nearly 23,000 reports. Of course, you would narrow that down on your own search, but we have the luxury of having some of the reports that I picked being very recent. So we can just simply click search to start. Okay, so we're going to be going to case report number 5. They're in chronological order. And before we dive into this case, I just want to give some context about verdict search. Now, Glenn, as the editor-in-chief, Glenn, do you have any information that you can provide regarding how verdict search is actual reporting and how that makes us distinct and unique?
Right. Evan's going to be showing you a bunch of reports, and the value of these verdict search reports versus those of our competitors is that they're compiled from interviews with the attorneys. So we engage in a full journalistic process to compile these reports. We're getting the information as it was presented at trial or as it stood on the day of the settlement, rather than relying on broad, non-specific allegations in a complaint or some other court filing. And that's how we get to specific recitations of standard of care, which Evan is going to get to momentarily.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. So what you're seeing here, just to give us, again, context of a report, is you have all the basic information of the case. You have the actual award amount, jurisdiction, injury types. Again, you can always narrow your search for the injury type. Here we simply put in medical malpractice, so that one key term that we put in with the drop-down menu is the only one that's highlighted. If it was a narrowed search, you'd be seeing more yellow on this page. Case name, date, again, we're going recent here. The plaintiffs, the attorneys, the experts, and of course you can click on the blue link to see all the cases the experts have testified in that are in verdict search. The insurer information is available. And then we go into the facts. What makes the facts very special is that we'll have the arguments made at trial. What did the plaintiff counsel argue? What did the defense counsel argue in MedMal? What was the plaintiff expert testimony? What was defense expert testimony? Concisely written so you can get straight to what you need. Explanation of the injury, the result. So I'm going to tease you a little bit and not go into the result yet. So why are we here? This is the Taylor Ivory case. Taylor was 13 years old and a basketball player, and quite good one. She visited a doctor who basically did an injection in her hip and found that she was going to require hip surgery. Now, the issue was this hip surgery necessary? Because it left her with some injuries and some limitation, and being 13 years old, that's going to go for quite a while. So the issue was there was no MRI undertaken. So was the MRI necessary? The jury ultimately agreed with the defense counsel that the MRI was necessary, and the surgery hence was not. So there's a breach in the standard of care. So we're going down to the actual result. The result was a $2.6 million verdict, and you're seeing how the breakdown for pain and suffering, loss of normal life, and the disfigurement from a scar. And now here is where the evaluation wasn't quite on point. A $1 million demand was not accepted, and there was no offer made. So the defendants ended up with a $2.6 million verdict against them. So in this case, when you have a young plaintiff and there's issues such as MRI not being administered, you may want to evaluate that claim a little bit differently than this one was evaluated. Now, verdict search makes it very easy to navigate. We're going to go straight to number 20. Again, a recent case. Now we're seeing the other side of the coin. We're seeing a defense verdict. And this is the Monica Post case. Now, Monica had a job that made her walk 5 miles a day. And she basically alleged that she had a foot fusion surgery that caused injury, and that conservative treatment should have still been applied. The defense came back and said conservative treatment was applied, This was a congenital condition due to foot arches and gait. And the jury ultimately went with that defense expert's testimony. Here, there was an offer of $25,000. Now that's low. That could be, nuisance value, trial costs. The man was $200,000. Monica probably could have gotten something between the $200,000 and the $25,000, but they went to trial. And with the jury being convinced that this was something inherent to her own physical composition, there was a defense verdict. So in this case, the evaluation was wrong. The plaintiff was too confident in the allegation that conservative treatment was still necessary when the defense was able to prove that that was attempted and tried. Also, not to make light, the jury actually was maybe not as nice as the defense expert, as they also factored in that she was very obese. That would have also contributed to exacerbating her inherent condition. So we're going to go to a third case here. Again, looking at evaluations and expert testimony. This time, we're going to go up to what I nicknamed the briefcase. This is where I have all of my cases saved. So Verdict Search will allow you to not only intuitively navigate, but also have your cases grouped in buckets so you can easily revisit those. There are also other features and benefits that are outside the scope of this webinar, but nonetheless, I just want to hint at some of the features that Verdict Search can provide. So I'm looking now for a $3 million verdict, and here I have it. Okay, so this is a full report. $3 million, and in this case, you had a security guard. And this security guard had a routine hernia surgery. Now, in this case, the expert testimony of the defense was very swaying on the jury, in that there was a mesh for this hernia surgery, and the defense alleged excessive staples. There was 27 staples total, and the defense expert said that was at least minimum 4 too many. This resulted in an injury that I don't think any of us are going to be able to pronounce, but here, I'll find it and highlight it. But essentially, that's going to leave this gentleman with long-term numbing and burning in his thighs. Now, he had 30 years left of work, and he's going to be sedentary now. So that's one thing to keep in mind. How the age of the plaintiff, what's their line of work? Is it physical? How many years is their life going to be impacted by the alleged injury? In this case, you got $3 million, see an appreciable amount for futures. And just like the Taylor case we explored, $1 million demand, no offer made whatsoever. So in this particular instance, defendant is facing a $3 million verdict, no offer made, and the demand was 1/3 of the total. So here we're seeing cases that exhibit all or nothing, okay? Even if you evaluate the case properly or you're off the mark, going to trial is always a gamble in every instance. Here we're seeing all or nothing. But if we evaluate wrongful death cases, you're going to also see some comparative negligence from the plaintiff. So let's go back to my briefcase. And Glenn, is there anything else that you would like to point out before I transition to the third prong here?
One point could be that in the 3 cases you've looked at, varying the extent to which the demands and the offers varied from state to state, and that shows the effects of tort reform in Texas, where the claims are much lower. But the point to the research customers is that you can specify your state or region and get numbers that are specific to your area, so that everything is relevant to you.
Yeah, it's a great point. What we won't have time to go into today are jurisdictional differences. But that's what Verdict Search can highlight and showcase very quickly by simply using, as again, that intuitive search features that we provide. Okay, moving on, this is the Richard Pokowski case. And Richard was stubborn, put it that way. I'll call it the combative patient. Okay, nearly a $5 million verdict. And Richard was on a cruise, a retirement cruise. And the boat was in port, and he was suffering cardiac arrest. He went to the boat's doctor, and the doctor administered medication, which the plaintiff experts said was improper medication, and the jury agreed with them. The medication was improper. So that contributed to his death, sadly. But it also came out that Richard was combative, that the boat's physician should have sent Richard to the hospital. There was time for that. The boat was in port. However, it turned out that Richard was a little stubborn and did not want to leave the boat. He was on vacation. So that resulted in comparative negligence. Yes, ultimately the impetus of his death was improper medication. The boat probably should have exerted more insistence that he go to the hospital, possibly call an ambulance. However, Richard was stubborn and wouldn't work with the professionals on the boat with respect to going to seek further care. So here we're going to see apportionment of liability. 70% to Royal Caribbean, 30% to Richard. There's the actual award, then the offset. So again, this is a great way for you researching cases where the plaintiff, there was allegations that the plaintiff was not following doctor's orders. Simple as that.
And Evan, can I just chime in here and add that Evan, in the interest of saving time, Evan did not show this to you, but in the verdict search tool, there was a way to search for medical malpractice cases in which there was an element of comparative negligence, so you can easily identify these cases if that's what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a variety of ways that can be done. Looking up wrongful death, looking up medical malpractice, and then entering the term comparative negligence standard of care in this search term area. Again, a little outside the scope of what we're going for today, but verdict search is a very, as I said, a very intuitive tool. So let's go back to my briefcase here for the cases that I've saved up for us. Okay, now we're going to the $4.7 million verdict. If it's in here, if it's not, I can easily find it. All right, let's go back to the search tool.
So these are the different categories that are available in all verdict searches. And again, by combining these, you can narrow your search down to whatever you want.
Yes. So here we're in all of our reports again. I'm going to be looking up. There you go. Wrongful death. That's how many reports we have. Now I'm narrowing my search by using the side feature. You don't always have to go back to the home page. The side column here, it's a river of information about how many reports we have for jurisdiction, condensing it down to a particular claim type, injury type, and so forth. As you can see, case type, award type, date range, even the amount of the awards. So if you're only looking for second, go on, Glenn.
Evan, if I can just point out as well, these numbers that we're showing for each particular case type or injury are only within the medical malpractice range that Evan is searching. If you were to search the entire database, the numbers would be far greater than that.
Okay, just going to repeat the wheel a little bit here and go to number 21, because my cases are pretty well lined up right now. So let's go to 21 in MedMal. This is the Connie Lockhart case. Here we go. Now, this is a pretty sad case, and it seemed that everybody was liable in this one. And there's going to be something procedurally I'm going to be showing you in this case, and this is why I've chosen it. To give you some context, Connie had some issues, and she ended up trying to take her own life by taking pills, an overdose. She ended up at the hospital emergency room, and the emergency room doctor administered a catheter. But just like Richard, she wasn't, being cooperative. So, she was flailing and kicking away, and her blood pressure was very low because of the pills. So unfortunately, the ER technician put the catheter in the wrong, put it in the wrong artery. So this caused a major issue with blood flow, and so much so that she eventually lost her leg. So in this case, you'll see that there was a $4.7 million verdict, but the liability was spread across the board. 3% liability to Lockhart herself for not cooperating, 27% liability to the treating doctor in the hospital who they allege should have found the improperly placed catheter. This doctor didn't place it, but should have found it in a reasonable time. 10% liability to Parman, and I'll tell you who Parman is in a second. And 60% liability to the hospital. That was only still in the case for a portion of liability. The hospital settled out ahead of time. So who is Parman? Parman was her psychiatrist, prescribed pills for depression that had a side effect of suicidal thoughts. Connie called in, said they were not working. They doubled her dose. And the next day she ended up taking the actions that she took. So here we're seeing how this is all apportioned. Now, where is Broom? Broom was the emergency room doctor. He's not here. Why? Always try to get your experts right. The plaintiff expert was not an emergency room care expert. So Bloom, excuse me, not Broom, Bloom moved for a directed verdict, got out of the case. The individual who was probably most responsible for what ultimately happened to her leg and was out of the case. So that's something where you can use verdict search to vet experts by using the hyperlinks that we have.
This might have been an instance where plaintiff's counsel would have been well served by checking verdict search to find critical care experts who could have spoken to this particular circumstance. Sorry for the little lag here. Here you're seeing, immediately I'm seeing one of the plaintiff experts and going through all of the cases that we have with them in chronological order from oldest to most recent. Okay, so finally, 23, Vincent Minor. And again, while Evan is loading the case, the tool can be used if you're handling a medical malpractice case. Of course, one of the things you want to do is investigate what the standard of care is, right? That's just the basics of the claim. You can search verdict search cases for that particular case type and review them and see in different cases how experts have discussed the standard of care for those particular circumstances. It's a good way to begin researching your case. Great, thank you, Glenn. So the final case we're going to take a look at today, over $3 million verdict. And in this one I chose because it's a mixed verdict. So Vincent had an issue with his bowels and was administered, was going to have some type of surgery, was administered anesthesia, but unfortunately he had a stomach that was still filled with food, which was really improper administration of anesthesia. They sued the surgeon and the anesthetician, if that's how you pronounce it, and they found that the doctor who provided the anesthesia was liable, but the surgeon himself was not. And here you can see negligence against Hairston and no negligence on the part of the surgeon, and then the breakdown. Okay, so those are the cases that I had pinned for us today. Glenn, before I just do a little parting, is there anything else that you would like to add, or? Well, we've only shown a few cases today to keep it brief, but again, as Evan showed at the outset, we have tens of thousands of cases on this topic and many other topics, so you can either go broad or you can go narrow with your searches. Okay, I'm gonna wrap right now with just a 20-second search here to just show you the capabilities. So we have medical malpractice. Let's go to California, big state, lots of reporting. And you're seeing this number's already auto-populating, and we can do surgery. And we're narrowing down our cases. And initially, you'll probably be going to counties as well. There's different ways counties award cases. Some are conservative, some are more plaintiff-friendly. So I just wanted to show how quickly this drop-down menu will return the results that you're looking for. In parting, I will have my information. I know I haven't opened this up for any questions. That's just because I wanted to fit everything that we had today lined up within the tight 30-minute window. But feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you may have.
Oops, there, tricky mouse. So there's my information. Feel free to jot it down. It was a pleasure demonstrating some of the capabilities of verdict search. And again, as Glenn hinted, this is the tip of the iceberg. We can really dive in much deeper. And there's capabilities that we have even beyond the actual verdict search subscription where you would be searching. We can pull data, data being medical malpractice cases, award types, injury types, all for all 50 states, for particular jurisdictions, and that would be sent to the user in a very editable and modifiable Excel spreadsheet. So that's also very popular with insurers. So if you're a plaintiff counsel out there, verdict search can be a way for you to really test what your medical malpractice claims are worth jurisdictionally. If you're a defense counsel, this is a way for you to really assess claims that are coming across your desk with maybe some very severe injuries and how those can be handled. And of course, if you're insuring medical providers and hospitals and physicians, verdict search could be an invaluable tool to really equip yourself right off the bat when you're receiving a claim about what you may be facing. Very time efficient claim evaluation, that's what verdict search offers. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. And again, my door is open. Call me, email me. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, folks.